Hello and welcome to Hell on Earth, Appendix 7, The End. I'm Chris Wade.
I'm Matt Christman.
And we are here live on Twitch to wrap up this whole series that we've been doing the last, 17 weeks or something like that. And really at least a year and a half for me and Matt. So welcome, everybody.
So much reading, so much underlining.
Oh my gosh, so many different colored pens.
Yep, I had a bunch of different color. At first I tried to color code my underlining and I realized that was a little ambitious, but it all worked out.
Yes. Well, I wanted to start today by doing a little can check with you all. I went out and got some German beer. This is a Rauch beer from Bamberg. So that's what I'm going to be sipping on today. Matt, I think.
God.
What's that?
I just have a seltzer, but it makes me think about how wildly dominant German culture, like at the lived level of like food and drink, that kind of stuff in America is just German, but we've completely wiped that out. You know, like before German immigrants showed up, Americans did not drink beer. Like they were not cracking cold ones to celebrate beating the British. They drank hard cider.
Hard cider and whiskey, yes.
That was it. Beer came with the Germans. It is a German import to the United States, and now it is a defining American beverage.
It's really wild how those 4 years in like 1914 to 1918 just wiped out any semblance of German culture. I mean, I guess the Second World War didn't help either, but, you know.
Yeah. And I think it's no coincidence that those Germans who created in the Victorian era our food and drink ways settled in the Midwest, our breadbasket.
Yes, where all the beef and wheat comes from, their ancestral foodstuffs.
Yep, and it's like, oh great, we can just create a culture of fucking excess here in these beautiful fruited plains, and then that became American culture. What is freedom? Freedom is a little bit of chicken fried, cold beer on a Friday night.
I think
and a cold one.
I think to this day, Cincinnati still has the largest Oktoberfest outside of Munich.
They do, out of Munich, yes. Bigger than any other one in Germany, even.
I've never been there as an adult, but I would like to go back. We should really play.
I have been to Cincinnati. I have been to Oktoberfest in Cincinnati, and I gotta say, it's mostly just they close down a stretch of street downtown, and they just line it with eateries. And some of them are German, but a lot of them are not. And there's beer, and there's some Oompa bands. It's mostly just a street festival, but it's fun.
We should really book a show in Cincinnati, at least for you and me.
Absolutely. We've been talking. We got to do the homecoming tour where we cut from Cincinnati up through Indiana to Chicago and Milwaukee.
Yes, exactly. But that's not what we're here to discuss today. Well, a little bit, the German heritage in the Americas is part of this whole story. But I wanted to start today with a little breaking news, 17th century breaking news. Just all of this stuff, the past is not dead. It's not even really past. We have two elements of this story that have hot, fresh news items this week. So I want to start off with Eduard Habsburg, the Tweeten Habsburg, who many of you probably know from online. This is something that I was pretty tickled that he did this year, which is a March Madness of greatest Habsburg's leaders. I'm not sure. I don't know if you have your screen pulled up, Matt, and you can see this.
Oh, let me see it.
I mean, if you pull up Twitch, you can see it. I don't know if
I'm looking. Who's he got? Who won? It's got to be Charles V, right?
So this is his final four. He did male and female brackets.
Maria Theresa in there?
Yeah. So Blessed Emperor Karl beat out Charles V.
He was the last one. He was the loser Habsburg. He's the one who's got the fucking boot prints on his ass, and he's the top Habsburg?
I mean, apparently the people spoke, the 1400s.
This is how you know the Habsburgs are losers, and this validates my thesis about this guy's book that just came out.
We'll get to that in a second, because that's the real news.
The failure of the Habsburg dynasty. Charles V at least was like, he was building. He was, he failed, but his reach was so titanic. Come on, how are you not going to give it to him?
And then in the ladies bracket, we got Empress Maria Theresa with a blowout, almost by 20 points over Empress Zita.
Yeah. We know Felix would have picked the hot one
Yes.
from the late 19th century.
She was she an actual Habsburg or just married into it?
I think she was a Habsburg.
So the reason I bring this guy up, A, because the March Madness is funny, but B, because this is still the same thing. He has a new book out this week called The Habsburg Way. Make Love the Habsburg Way.
Yes.
7 Rules for Turbulent Times, which is a book of life advice that you can get from reading the history of the Habsburgs.
Yes.
And I bring this up because Matt actually read this book and reviewed it for Slate.com. This is Matt's.
They reached out thanks to the strong Habsburg-related brand that we have for this show.
This is Matt's first byline in my old alma mater. Real Chris heads will know that I worked at Slate for many years. But Matt, do you want to give us a little preview of this article? What you learned from what we can learn from the Habsburgs?
Okay, so the funny thing about this book is that it's a fusion in its presentation and pitch to the audience of 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson and Mark Corrigan's Business Secrets of the Pharaohs. Because it wants to both be like life advice, as he said, for troubled times or whatever the fuck. But he also wants it to be like how to succeed, in your career, like in life, like more broadly than that. And that means he's doing the thing that Mark Corrigan made fun of in Pete Show, which is try to get business secrets from, historical figures, like how Attila the Hun will teach you how to run your HR department, that kind of thing.
With brutal reprisals.
Yeah. And so it's both of those things, but the real twist is it's really neither of those things. That's just a front. That's just a way to get you to buy it. What it really is a pitch for the government of Hungary, the Orban regime that he works for as ambassador to the Holy See, which is one of the most no-show jobs in diplomacy. You got to show up for the Vatican fucking bingo night. Like you're not doing diplomacy with the fucking Pope. You're just there to get your picture taken. So he is the Hungarian ambassador to the Vatican. And so he is pitching Orban's Hungary. That's really what the book is a pitch for.
Well, good luck to Edward for working that out. I don't have a picture of him, but our other favorite current Habsburg is the race car driving Habsburg.
Yes, vroom vroom.
Whose name is let me just look this up. Formula One.
He's a Ferdinand, isn't he?
Ferdinand. He's Ferdinand Habsburg.
He's one of the Ferdinands. That's what the Ferdinands do now. They used to rule Europe. Now they ride around in a little circle.
He is 26 years old. He actually kind of looks like a Timothée Chalamet.
That
type.
Seems about right.
Yeah. And he is a Formula One race car driver. And in my mind, race car driver or DJ are about the best, most noble person. If you find yourself born into a ancient European dynasty in the 21st century, like
absolutely,
those are the things.
That is a moral decision.
Those are the things where you're not hurting anybody, other than maybe yourself if your race car goes off the track.
But like even Edward is not really like that menacing. It's not like this book feels dangerous. It's very pathetic. He's tugging at your call. He's tugging at your sleeve. He's desperately wants to be liked. He gives all these like winking. He's like, oh, of course we love multiculturalism. The Habsburgs ruled over a multicultural empire. They did a great job. It's like, yeah, tell that to Gavrilo Princip. I don't think that really went that way. Okay, buddy. Okay. But so the book is divided up into these rules for life, and they're all pieces of incredibly advice that is so broad it's banal, or only specifically referring to like if you are a 17th century monarch in Europe, this is what you should do. So like some of them are just like get married. One of them is be Catholic, which gets 2 chapters. But other of them are like be brave in battle or have a great general. And it's like, okay, how many people? All right, how metaphorical can we get here? Where are we getting a general from if we're not actually having a war? Like how can we make this advice meaningful? And other of them are just like t-shirt slogans, like believe in the empire and die well. Which is kind of metal, but he mostly means like make sure that you've given
put your
enough
affairs in order. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that you've done enough piety. You've been a good enough Catholic.
Well, dying well, I think in my mind also means he's okay, fine. He's not Formula One. I'm seeing in the chat people correcting me. I don't know the difference between cars. He drives fast cars in Europe. That's all basically Formula One.
Yeah.
But
it's like a Formula 3, which is like it can't go as fast and it's less dangerous.
Is Harlan Crow? Is that what he was invested in? Weren't we just talking about that?
Formula 3.
Yes.
Yeah. Basically, overpowered go-karts.
Yes. I believe Felix referred to that as Millhouse Ass Racing League.
Correct.
I was thinking about, speaking of dying well, one of the lessons that I would take away from this series is, have your succession in order when you go, which is one of the things I was thinking about watching the last few episodes of course, Succession. It is
indeed.
For all the master of the universe stuff that Logan fancies himself, croaking on the toilet without your line of succession in order, that's a fail.
Yeah, he failed epically there, leaving ambiguous documentation. This is not good, man. That's not how you do it. Thank you to Rye Guy 0001 for pointing out the way to die well is to subscribe to Catholic Cemetery Monthly.
Yes, exactly. That's how you know that.
I think that Habsburg would agree with that because he's very into the Catholic thing.
So moving on from so this is kind of the fate of one of our royal lines right now is making mediocre, sub-mediocre self-help books to capitalize on your name and your position.
And just begging for any kind of attention from the plebes.
Yes.
It's like, I thought that the lions didn't care about the opinions of sheep. This whole book is like, hey, sheep, please like me.
Being on Twitter in general, I kind of, for one of our appendices, I almost thought about trying to get in touch and score an interview with him. I would do a little talking about the Habsburg legacy a lot, but it would all be a wind up to just be like, what does it feel to descend from living gods and now just be stuck here on Twitter with the rest of us assholes making fun of you for being inbred?
You've been cast into the dirt. And so at that point, doesn't clinging to these memories and to these symbols more pathetic than anything?
Yeah.
And also frankly masochistic? Just let it go, brother.
All right, so moving on from one dynasty featured in this series to another, we have an update on the Jacobite line of succession. These are the descendants of the Stuart kings of England.
The proper and true kings of England, Ireland, Scotland,
it looks like...
fuck you, France, and yes, the United States of America.
Are we online? One second, let me see. Sorry, I'm getting some F's in chat. Okay, great.
I think we're back on.
Okay, cool. Anyway, so this is Franz, Duke of Bavaria, who this week at age 89 came out as gay and formally acknowledged what had largely been an openly known thing, his partner of 40 years. To which I say, good job, buddy. Live your best life. I'm happy you can come to terms with this.
Also,
this late in life.
Huge suckets to the plastic patty royalists and fake Jacobites like Matthew Walther. I think, honestly, in a crypto sense, Ross Douthat, Michael Brendan Doherty, these guys who are like, actually, the real king of England and the United States, those are the Stuart line. Boom, gay guy.
Yes.
Boom, annihilated.
The Jacobite line of succession has gone woke.
Boom. They got woke, folks. They went woke. And by the way, if you might be wondering, why is the Stuart pretender a Wittelsbach? We know why. Because James I's daughter married Frederick of the Palatinate. Boom.
Yes. So it does, again, more power to him. His particular line of the Wittelsbach dynasty were anti-Nazi during World War II, and he has been very, very overt of being like, yeah, the whole Jacobite successor thing. It's curiosity
and it is.
Of my legacy. I don't have any, I'm not taking any of this seriously. Yeah, it's fine. So, although it is funny and I think appropriate to acknowledge that if we are to take a rightful king of America, it's
not one of those kraut jumped frickin' Hanoverians or any of that bullshit.
It is an 89-year-old Bavarian gay guy.
Yep.
And frankly, I think we should pursue that at this point.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
How we're not doing great otherwise. None of those countries.
Yes. Bring him in as king. We can finally separate head of state and head of government.
Yep.
Bring him in.
Oh God, just get some of the pressure off.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And it would be. It could solve the dialectic between the anti-woke people and the monarchist trads.
A woke Stuart monarch is the final synthesis of the whole.
Yes.
Of the entire culture war that extends back to the fucking Cavaliers and Roundheads.
Yes, exactly. Let's make it happen. And congrats to Franz of Bavaria.
Yeah, way to go. Way to live your truth, buddy.
And his partner.
Respect to you. By the way, this reminds me, some people were a little annoyed that we didn't go into the Jacobites at the last episode that we did, but it was already the longest episode we'd recorded. We didn't want to get it too overstuffed.
You got to cut it off with the Glorious Revolution because that's just a clean end.
But there is this attempt by the people around the Stuarts, eventually the son of James II, Bonnie Prince Charlie Stuart himself, started organizing in Ireland, first in Ireland where they were defeated famously at the Battle of the Boyne, but then later in Scotland, and eventually in a system of like uprisings that were finally ended in the final battle at Culloden in the 1740s, in which Bonnie Prince Charlie's Highlanders are massacred, and that leads to the Highland clearances when the Scottish clans, the Catholic clans that were still up there in the hills, were forced down into cadastral, capitalized Protestant UK. And that process of cleaning up included one of the events that inspired the Red Wedding in Game of Thrones, which is when the Campbells used right of custom and staying under someone's roof to massacre 30 members of Clan MacDonald who had not yet signed loyalty to the new Dutch royal house. And to this day, there's signs in rural inns and in Scotland that say, like, no dogs and no Campbells.
I mean, I was delighted to find. Well, this is actually a good transition into our next segment of like, what we kind of learned individually doing this series, because coming in, part of putting these things together is that I want to get the history right. I want to get our takeaway right. I want to get our argument right. But of course, I also want to make a good story and like arrange things in a proper dramatic way. And going into this and acquainting myself with the history, it was an absolute delight to learn that there is a red wedding in the Hell on Earth story as well. The Iger bloodbath.
Yep.
And I hope, some people who are coming in who didn't know this history, because I purposely tried to set up, when the death of Gustavus, that there is a kind of clearing of the decks, and now Wallenstein is in the position of power, and it is just too perfectly Game of Thronesy that then the beginning of the next episode at his height, that he should be able to run over the entire country, is just him getting killed and his whole party being killed at dinner, and then him getting killed in his bedroom. Yeah,
that's the real Ned Stark shit. Like after Lutzen, you're like, oh, Wallenstein is he's goated. He's got the stars with him. His astrology is perfect. It's on point. And then guys run in and they yell, "Who's a good imperialist?"
Halberd through the gut.
They start stabbing everybody.
So yeah, I want to talk just a bit now about kind of what both of us learned doing this series. Beyond with we went in with like we wanted to tell a certain. Oh no, actually that's not what I want to do now. Never mind. I want to do corrections and clarifications first. Things that we missed, things that we were criticized for during the series. And I want to start this off with a note on pronunciation.
Suck it.
Yes, that is my note. Suck it. If you can pronunciation is fash. If you can understand what we're saying, then it is not mispronounced. And furthermore, I want to point out that I grew up about 45 minutes away from a town called Versailles, Indiana. Matt grew up about 45 minutes away from a town called New Berlin, Wisconsin.
Which they changed the pronunciation of in the World War I. It used to be New Berlin.
Yes, but you always knew it as Berlin. We are,
Yep.
from our ancestral Midwest folkways, born into having
Mispronunciation.
a disadvantage of pronunciation of European names, and to be mad at us about it is frankly to deny our folkways. You know,
It's true. It's ableist too.
there were things that I did very much look up and try to get right that I still fucked up because my tongue is bad. There are things that I didn't look up and still fucked up because they are too stupid to get right, like Sarah Grotenbusch, which many Dutch listeners inform me that they don't even call that. They just call Den Bosch, which means
the Dutch get with your made up bullshit language. Every Dutch word is a prank. It's like it is the Fernet of languages. It exists to get strangers to say stupid things with their mouths because they all speak English. And they all speak German, probably. And Dutch is like this weird hybrid of the two, a perfect hybrid of both of them. But like it's like phonetic German English. It's like they're making it up as they go along.
Yes.
They don't get to complain about pronunciation.
The one that I will throw Matt under the bus for is I had gone in going Magdeburg, and for some reason Matt started with Magdeburg, and I assumed that Matt just knew better than me because why else would you pronounce it that way? So that one's completely on Matt.
Damn it.
Yes. But
you know
what we're saying.
I thought there was a D.
Yeah, Magdeburg. Anyway,
Magdeburg.
That's my note on pronunciation. You could figure out what we were saying, so it was basically fine. The other one big correction, I mean, I was very much nervous about this whole series because, you know, it's a lot of deep history and, you know, we're trying to get it right, but also move fast. So there's stuff that we could have gotten wrong. Honestly, the most mad that anybody got out over a factual assertion that we did in this series was in the very first episode, claiming that Martin Luther was the first celebrity. And the argument or the counterfactual that we put out against it was perhaps somebody like Julius Caesar, who you could maybe see his face on coins, but you wouldn't know him in a parasocial way. And people were like, that is incorrect. You could go and his speeches and books were read in the public forum and you could hear his words live, blah, 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 blah. I will concede.
Not the same thing. We're talking about penetrating the home.
Yes.
We're talking about a sort of notoriety, personal notoriety that penetrates the homely envrin, which no pre-literate society can do.
Yes, and I will concede that Caesar is probably the worst example that we could have picked for that, but I think when you're talking about the actual meaning of the word celebrity, it necessitates a mass media, the kind of which did not exist until Luther was around. And I know that's like kind of giving a tautological definition to the term, but whatever. It is the definition I have. You can't be a celebrity without mass media. You can't have mass media before the printing press. Martin Luther is the first celebrity. Sorry to all you Caesar heads out there.
I love the salad, though. Let me tell you.
Oh, great salad!
It's wonderful. You get when they get the real anchovies in there.
Oh, the creamy, the fishy taste, the tang.
And when they risk it with the actual egg yolk instead of, you know, just.
Have you ever seen the thing where they build up the dressing from the bottom of a the bottom of the bowl up? Yes. Yes. That's a good salad. All right.
But I mean, not in the sense that, you know, it's good for you, which is annoying.
Yeah.
But it's delicious.
Anything else that you would like to clarify on?
Yeah, that you actually jolted something. When we were talking about Charles V's response to the early Reformation and why he didn't go harder, I underemphasized one of the key things, which is that he required a princely cooperation to militarily meet the threat of the Ottomans. That was the presiding concern. I mean, yes, the war, the Italian war is happening, but like the critical frontier of the empire was in Hungary, closest to the rest his German holdings, and that question of getting them to cooperate with military maneuvers against the Ottomans was his overriding concern relative to, you know, what he needed out of his German lands. So he pretty much was hand tied in dealing with the Protestants if he wanted to have a viable military coalition against the Turks. So let me just put that in there now.
That's a great clarification. So now we're going to move into what we learned and what surprised us from this series. I wanted to say to start this that like learning about this, getting deeper into this history was, you know, very, very fascinating. And you know, the further back in history you go, the kind of drier and more impenetrable things can be or can appear to be. But the thing that really jumped out for me was kind of ways to get access to the minds of the people in the past. And one of the things that came across for me is that across all time periods, no human emotion for me is more recognizable and sympathetic than annoyance and frustration. You know, because there's something so eternal about not even anger, which can be manifest in different ways. You know, there are ways that like rage and anger manifest in the past that seem alien because it has to be constrained by all forms of manners and stuff. But people just being pissed off that things are difficult or not going the way they want to, whether it's like Luther with people not understanding what he's trying to do, or Charles V with running his empire, or John George with the, you know, how stupid the prosecution of this whole war is and how nobody can get to a yes, even though it should be so easy. Like, those are the emotions in these people that where I'm always like, I feel you. I feel how irritating it is to do things. And whether that thing is running a Holy Roman principality or, you know, mailing an annoying package for me right now, those are the moments of you know, surprising synchronicity that I find all the time. And that was one of the ways that that it surprised me that was the thing that really jumped out at me in this rather brutal story of war and desecration during this period.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, most people just want to be in front of a fire wrapped in some sort of skin, eating, gnawing at a turkey leg, perhaps.
Drinking a horn of ale.
Listening to a very loud brass band. Watching a jester kick himself in the nuts. That's the good stuff. That's what you're trying to get to. And then you got this war going on, and you're just like, oh, God damn it, I got to put down my flagon and fucking deal with this.
So that was one of my big takeaways is that these people, we're not so different. You know,
there's a whole podcast about this era with that name.
Yes, with Eleanor Yanega, who we had on. Yes. They just started a series on the 100 Years War, which should be pretty interesting.
It's actually a little longer than that. That's the thing I love about the 30 Years War. Right on there. The Defenestration in 18, Westphalia in 48. Boom. 30 years.
Yes. Easy. Nice, clean, round numbers. Anything you'd like to put into the what we learned category? Something that surprised you?
I've definitely I've gotten a lot of I think I've gotten in touch with just like the psychic terrain of the early modern world, like what it must have felt like to be pulled in those directions, like towards an abstract, like mediated sense of self relative to others, connected to like a deeply embedded social life, you know, an enchanted social world that has to now be fit into this new brace, you know, shoved through this keyhole into a new like type of subjectivity, and the way that print essentially creates a gateway to fantasy and starts a process of culture-wide insanity making.
Yes. I think we have some questions about that, so maybe we'll get into that more. Yeah, I mean, it is the most difficult thing, but I think it's kind of the same for both of us. Is like, you can read the history, you can read the dates and who went where when, but really wrapping your head around the mindset of these people in a sympathetic way. And, Eleanor, to reference her again, talked about that at the very end of our bonus episode with her, is that if she has one takeaway is that, to do your best to think of these people like us. And not rubes deluded by a false superstition who, spend their time arguing. Like, fucking today is a perfect example. When you think about all those colloquies about what happens to the bread during communion or whatever and how important it is, I know nobody's taking it quite like murderously serious, but think about how much ink is being spilled, digital ink is being spilled today around the stupid blue check marks.
Oh my God.
And think about, obviously
that's energy.
Yes.
That's belief. Like, we are not any less enchanted than these people.
Mm-hmm.
We do not have any less of a supernatural understanding of the world around us than these people. The difference is that our enchantments are all oriented around technology.
Yes.
As opposed to nature.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference between us and them.
Or an institution of a church, which, is a kind of technology of its day,
Right. But I mean, like, it's referencing a natural world that is understood to be natural and beyond human control, versus a technological regime that the supernatural stuff comes not from believing in a God external to us, but believing that we are in fact God because we have access to this technology. It's still a belief.
Yes.
It is still a supernatural world that you're living in.
So, and I really hope that if we've gotten one thing across through this series, A, it's that this time period is cool and gnarly.
Absolutely.
And B, that, these people are us, and things that we are going through now, that thing that we said at the very end of the series, that it's always the end of the world, is true. And even if our present moment is more precarious because of the increased technology, the ways in which we respond to it are very recognizable in the ways that our pre-modern ancestors responded to their crises.
Absolutely.
And you can see a lot of yourself in these rather foreign-feeling moments of the past. So, yes, with that, let's move into questions. I'm going to be trying to do double duty here because we've got some audio questions that people submitted as calls. And then I'm also going to be trying to monitor the chat and pull some questions out of that. So I'm mostly kind of going to be playing the calls and passing them off to Matt and then monitoring the chat and trying to pull some questions out. Bear with me here, but let's go in to one of the big ones. So big that we got many comments about it and 2 questions about it. So I'm going to play these questions back to back because they're both asking aspects of the same thing. Oh, by the way, I'm seeing so many people say this. The soundtrack, 2 things. Soundtrack will go live on Bandcamp this Wednesday, along with merch. The whole show, 30 tracks of soundtrack will be available for purchase for $5. All funds from the soundtrack will be distributed back to the audiences. Almost every track except pre-release things by other artists will be available for royalty-free if you would like to use them in your own projects. So soundtrack goes live on Wednesday. You'll see tons of stuff about that. And we're going to debut a brand new song about the show by Charles Austin at the end of this stream and show you previews of some of the merch. So stick around. All right, here are our first 2 questions.
Hi, first time, long time. I was wondering if you guys had any thoughts on the Brenner-Wallerstein debate and Robert Brenner's critique of the origin of capitalism and world systems theory. Thanks.
All right, so that's the first one on it, and...
Hey, Matt. Hey, Chris. You ended Hell on Earth with a story about the origins of capitalism, and the story was something of a synthesis between the Robert Brenner and the Emanuel Wallerstein accounts of the origins of capitalism. My question is, what do you think each of these origin stories, the Brenner and the Wallerstein, got wrong, and how did you arrive at your own account? Cheers.
All right, so I will give my answer first because I feel like Matt will be able to go a little more in depth about this. I read Brenner, I read Wallerstein going into this. I was thinking about these 2 methods as we were putting this together. I will just say that kind of camps of historiography and being very pick one or the other always rubs me the wrong way. I always think of history as kind of like, I don't know, when you're looking at a map in a video game and you're toggling different terrain maps on so you can see different overlays. And each one is just a different filter through which different truths are elucidated. And so you can kind of take different versions of analysis and look at the story they tell or how they shape the facts into a story and make your own conclusions from them. And the way that we ended up telling this is the one that makes sense to me. But I'll let Matt get more into exactly what this debate is and how he was synthesizing it, doing it.
Right.
Doing it with analysis.
The Wallerstein-Brenner debate is this argument about the origins of capitalism, and broadly whether it is to be found in the specific response of English agriculture to this crisis of declining agricultural productivity, the defined European agriculture by the time of the Black Death. That's the Brenner theory, that it's a rural process about a transformation in agricultural production methods. Wallerstein sketches out capitalism as part of the broader world systems critique of and theory of capitalism as a phenomenon of trade, emerging out of trade networks and out of trade relationships within Europe and between Europe and other parts of the world. And I absolutely believe that if you get to the very nitty-gritty level, you can find things between these two theories that are fundamentally in conflict and cannot be resolved. But that's not the level of analysis that I need to operate on as a guy doing a history podcast. I can look at both of these questions, and to me, they seem to be complementary.
Mm-hmm.
They seem to be telling the same story. I think that the Brenner thesis outlines how capitalism emerges as a practice that pushes out voluntary interactions with the market and turns them into mandatory interactions with the market. I think that process is defined by Wallenstein and Wood, or Brennan and Wood, is persuasive. But I also think that how you get from there to capitalism being hegemonic first in Europe and then in the world is through the very trade networks that Wallerstein sketches out. And so this Hell on Earth ended with us sort of wrapping up the Brennan argument for how capitalism emerges in England. And next year, we're hoping to do a 7 years war pod that talks about how that state then exports capitalism, and it's going to be an affirmation of that Wallerstein thesis.
But it's like, from our perspective, or at least from mine, that exportation would not be possible without this whole process of the 30 Years of War. If
exactly.
The Dutch don't become independent, if Spain's one-way trade relationship with the New World doesn't collapse under the weight of its declining empire, if the Dutch don't then, if the competition between the English and the Dutch doesn't then force the rapid expansion of this worldwide trade around the world, like all these things are interlinked, even if the specific mode is what's being built in the grassy fields of England.
And it's all kicked off really by the Spanish, because the Spanish introduced the concept of a hegemon to post-Roman Europe for the first real time within it, as opposed to Huns or Ottomans or something. And then by creating that, it creates in the other powers in Europe a new orientation against Spain, and they start organizing against Spain, and that organization takes the form of, say, the Dutch rebelling, and then creating the modern fucking joint stock company.
Yes.
And it leads to the French creating the first absolutist state. And England gets constitutional monarchy. Meanwhile, Spain is stuck with the system that got them there, because once in power, those forces just use their power to keep it and not change the system, meaning it cannot respond to any of this, and it falls apart, breaks into pieces. And then the French and the English feast on its corpse.
Mm-hmm.
And America, of course.
Yes. So I'm glad we got to those, because from the very first episode, people were hooting and hollering in comments about Brenner and Wallerstein, to which I also would say, we will get to that. We tried to set up this whole series in a kind of elliptical way, where we bring up go up so far with something and then kind of loop back and move a little further. So,
because the 7 Years' War is when you go from this post-Spanish conflict where the French are, they're in there too, and it's a back and forth. You got your Austrian succession, you got your Spanish succession, and then 7 Years' War. That's when it's all over, and England is going to become the dominant force for the next 200 years.
But we'll get to that in many ways. All right, let's go to our next question. And again, I'm watching the chat to see if any of you guys have questions there. This one's a little more frivolous.
Hey guys, I love the show. I'm going to Germany soon, and I'm wondering if I wanted to get a historical highlights tour of the 30 Years' War. What should I see in Germany? Thanks.
That, by the way, was from Jacob D. The first two questions were by Charles W. and David S. Thank you, Jacob D., David S., and Charles W. So, historical highlights tour of Germany. I was in Germany last summer. I just went to Berlin because, I wanted to party on my honeymoon rather than see a bunch of history stuff. And you know what? I have actually already seen the Czech the Czech castle where they did the defenestration. But I was thinking about this.
You saw the defenestration.
Yes, of course. The blessed window. I was kind of looking into this. It's tough. There's not that much 30 Years' War stuff in Germany. What would you say, Matt?
No, they mostly they didn't preserve most of the battlefields. Like Breitenfeld, the battlefield of Breitenfeld, that had two major battles, including the first big Swedish victory. There's an autobahn cutting right through it. In fact, it like separates, like from above, it separates where Tilly and the Swedes would have been.
I've seen some pictures. Like, if you really look hard, you can find some still extant monastery ruins where, like, the Catholics or the Protestants, or probably the Protestants if it's a monastery, tore it down. One thing I will say that might be worth going is to the city of Heidelberg, where the Heidelberg Castle, where the seat of Frederick V, where all that stuff was happening, where he was dressing up as Germanic figures, saying that he was going to be the savior of Germany. You could see those ruins, and of course, in the basement of Heidelberg, there is the Heidelberg Tun, one of the largest wine casks in all of Western Europe. That platform, I don't know if you can see here. I'll try to blow this up a bit. There's a person standing on top of it here.
Yeah, it's gigantic.
Yeah.
All wine, too. Those wine track palatinates.
Yes.
Palatines.
So if you go to one city, Heidelberg, get a
Heidelberg
little...
would be cool. I really want to go to Munich sometime.
I would like to go to
there. But another good place to go, Munster, and see St. Lambeth's Church, and see the frickin' cages where the bones of the Munster rebels, the Anabaptist rebels, were interned for centuries.
Yes,
they took the bones out, but they left the cages.
Thank you to the several people who sent us who DM'd us photos of the Munster cages. While I was taking a train from Amsterdam to Berlin, one of our stops was in Munster, and I was craning my neck out of the side of the windows to see if I could get a glimpse of the cathedral, but I don't think I could see anything. But otherwise, I don't know. I've been to the Berlin twice, but I've never been to the German countryside, and I would like to go and take a more scenic trip of Germany because I'm sure there is some beautiful stuff there.
Absolutely, and it will remind you of your birthplace.
Mm-hmm.
It's very Ohio-y.
Yes.
The nice parts. And there are some. Thank you very much.
All right. Next question from our call-ins. This is from Ben J.
Hey, Matt. Hey, Chris. My name is Ben. My question is, how was the Holy Roman Empire able to survive for another century and a half after the 30 Years' War? What factors enabled it to maintain legitimacy and keep going as a sort of semi-coherent political unit after such a catastrophe? Thanks.
Essentially because the Habsburgs got buck broken by the 30 Years' War. The threat, the fear of Habsburg dominance that the office of the Holy Roman Emperor represented for the princes of Germany, the sort of Damocles that was sort of all over all their heads, in the 15 and 1600s. After Westphalia is imposed, it really kind of goes away, and the princes of Germany start competing against each other really on the same terms as they are with the rest of Europe. And that's why you see a bunch of wars inside the Holy Roman Empire over the next couple hundred years. Like when Prussia goes to war with Austria, that's all technically supposed to be within the Holy Roman Empire.
Is there anything to Austria then turning east as the Ottomans decline and kind of orienting their empire towards Hungary and the Balkans in their
the
period?
The Habsburg family, like that they lose the office of Holy Roman Emperor as a power projection point. They lose the Spanish frickin' crown after the death of Carlos the Bewitched and the end of the War of Spanish Succession. So they're really kind of forced to look east. And so then they become this more eastward focusing Austro-Hungarian Empire, where their insistence on holding on to those goddamn Balkans sparks World War I. So great job, everybody. Way to go.
More lessons from the Habsburgs.
Yeah, genius. Great work. Which is so funny. He actually says in the book, like, as a way to show that I'm not a scary fascist. I believe in multiculturalism. The Habsburgs were great at it. Like, yeah, they killed it. They literally killed it.
All right, great. Okay, we've got a hinge point question here. I will look at that in a second. Also from the chat, somebody said that the museum in Hamburg has a lot of 30 Years War stuff.
Hell yes.
Which was nice. So
I'd love to go to Hamburg, Joe.
I would love to all these cities. I would love to do a tour. Let's just do a tour of Germany. Let's just take
tour
this
Germany,
show,
baby.
Yeah, this show on the road.
We'll do it in front of 10 expats every place.
Yes. Look, if they can put us up in a hotel and pay for a meal,
that's really it. Yeah, just give me a pig knuckle. Let me hold a pig knuckle.
Jam a Kano through doing history pods through Germany.
Yes.
Play all the places can play it in the 70s. In Cologne.
Yes.
All right. I am looking for questions in the chat again, but here is our next call-in from Caleb K.
Hey, Matt and Chris. I loved hearing about how the advancements in communications technology changed the masses' conceptions of themselves and their communities in the early modern period. What differences and similarities do you see between the printing press and the internet as tools for communication, and what long-term response do you think capital could have to the internet, like the old aristocracies had to the printing press?
I'll take a stab at this first, just to do the broad categorical difference between the printing press and the internet. The printing press made everyone a reader. The internet makes everyone a publisher. And that is the singular difference between this. Printing still required specialized skills. The internet requires an internet connection, and then you can be read by theoretically everyone in the world, or at least everybody with an internet connection. And that is a categorical difference, and is going through the same process of breaking people's brains in a new and exciting and entertaining way.
Absolutely. Yes, it's technology is taking a subjectivity that was previously held by a relatively small percentage of the population and is universalizing it, and that means everyone has to reorient themselves, and in the process, we all go a little more insane.
I mean, maybe a way to think about it is like the printing press made everybody for the first time feel like they could read and know the Word of God. The internet makes everybody feel like they can write the Word of God.
Absolutely, yeah. The idea that there's a distinction has collapsed. Like my point of view is God's eye, which it's true in one sense, but that's true of everybody. Then you need to chill out.
Mm-hmm.
You need to stop. Everybody doesn't need to know everything about everybody.
Yes. All right, let's take some questions from the chat, which I had finally had some time to read, even if these were posted a few minutes ago. Here's something that I probably can't answer. Maybe Matt does. We discussed the periphery powers during the 30 Years' War, but there was no mention of the Tsardom of Russia, which had experienced an extreme upheaval in the 17th century. Any thoughts? Forces at
I
work.
know it's very that's a bummer because Russian history during this period is incredibly interesting. I mean, you've got a whole time during this thing, right around the time the 30 Years' War is brewing. You've got what is known in Russia as the time of troubles.
Mm-hmm.
When you have the central authority fall, you have successive insurgent groups trying to claim the throne by saying that they had like the lost son of the Tsar, Dmitri. And there are several false Dimitris who come onto the scene to become Tsar for like 5 minutes before one of them got overthrown, killed, and his ashes were fired out of a cannon towards Poland because he was considered a Polish client. And you got the Polish. It's all fascinating. We didn't really have time to get into it though. But yeah, like you've got what you have in Russia is the same phenomenon happening all throughout Europe, but in a context of a wildly smaller population relative to the area, and the phenomenon of interaction with the steppe culture of the tatars. That's right, the tatars.
The tatars.
Yeah, the remnant of the old Golden Horde, which is a relationship that none of the other European powers had, and they end up not going through that process that we're talking about in our show until centuries later. They're essentially forced to modernize in order to compete with the other powers of the continent from scratch, not as part of an organic process of building like a bourgeois power in cities. That doesn't occur. It's mandated by the state as a way to avoid being overrun.
I would just like to thank Shredosaurus for making me laugh with, when you find yourselves in times of trouble, false Dimitris comfort me. That's very good. Thank you, Shredosaurus, for that.
Yeah.
All right,
and the Romanovs end up winning, by the way. That's where the Romanovs come in.
Yeah.
To end the time of troubles. They're like, all right, we've got this. And they did forever.
All right, one more question from the chat before we get back to the calls. Here's a hinge point question. We love our hinge points, folks. Everybody tune in to Real Time with Bill Maher for Danny Bessner tonight.
Yes, that's true. He's going to be on fucking Bill Maher. He's going to be issuing new rules.
I'm 50-50 whether they butt heads or get along like old bros.
I feel like Danny's going to want to defer to brother Bill. We'll see. He could go in there and just try to dom him. I'm very interested to see how it goes.
Yes. Anyway, here's a hinge point question. What does it look like, and I will add to the asker's question, is it even possible if one of the other German states, Bohemia, the Palatinate, to the sense that it existed in the 19th century, is the one that ends up being the impetus behind a unified Germany in the 18th and 19th century?
Yeah, that's one of those where it's just hard to imagine any points where a contingent event could kind of swing the gate there.
Wonder if Frederick the Great just explodes one day.
There you go. Like, what if Frederick the Great, like
a cannon falls on his head when he's 18 or something?
Yeah, he kills himself after they execute his boyfriend in front of him, which is what happened when he was a kid. Like, that is possible, I guess. Yeah, like just take Frederick the Great out of the equation. Maybe Bavaria. I don't know. Probably. I don't think the Palatinate could. I don't know how much it changes anything, though. I mean, eventually it's just going to have to be the most effective military machine, you know? So somebody's going to take that job up. And, if it's not Frederick the Great, it's going to be somebody else.
I can't really add to that. That sounds about right. To my knowledge, like nobody else in the 18th and 19th century is developing the military dominance of Prussia.
Yeah, they just put their whole bussy into it.
They maxed all their sliders, all their XP points into military.
Yeah. That's what you do. And we haven't developed a capitalist economy with its, efficiencies. We'll just, go all in on army.
It's like trying to win the military victory in Civ. You know, you just have to.
And you know what?
Develop more.
It worked.
Yeah.
They became a power somehow. They became one of the great powers with a capital G of Europe. Amazing.
All right, back to the call-in questions. This is Henry B.
Hey guys, in the show you talk about how the advent of print media, news, and most importantly posting drove a lot of the social changes in the 17th century. My question is, what writers from the time would have been the subject of the 17th century Chapo's reading series? Like, who were the Meghan McArdles and Rods of the 30 Years' War era? Thanks.
One guy who comes to mind is good old Hugo Grotius. You kids down with Hugo Grotius? He was a Dutch political theorist and diplomat who essentially founded modern just war theory. He said, actually, sometimes doing war against your fellow Christians is good when you have a good reason. Which coincidentally are exactly all the reasons that the Dutch went to war for. Oh my God, what a coincidence. I think you can have fun busting his balls.
Yeah. That's kind of like one of those, the New York Times op-ed page for the Iraq war guys.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Like, we don't want to do this, but if we were to do it, the only just reason would be the exact reasons laid out by the U.S. government.
Yeah. It's like I'm inventing a new type of ethics that just coincidentally is the state interest of the Dutch Republic.
Who is that guy with the crazy name who is doing all the iconoclasm around Frederick's court in
Abraham Sculptutus.
I feel like
he was
Sculptutus,
the theologian at Heidelberg.
I feel like guys like Sculptutus could kind of form like a Rod Dreher figure of the time. You know, these real fringe religious fanatics.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The wackos would be very fun.
I'm sure 17th century Chapo would be reading dispatches from the Gomerist debates and making fun of it.
Oh, yeah, it's like, oh, man, look at these Gomerists.
Yes.
Get out of here with this.
All the guys that we talked about in the John D. Live episode, who are around the court of Elizabeth, all these people publishing things about why their view of, what to do with like the eel jetties. They're not jetties. It's eel
traps.
Yeah.
Weirs,
eel weirs, which was a huge issue in domestic English
net,
politics of like how many.
Who's going to have access to the eels? Who's going to make the delicious eel pies?
And I'm sure that there would be tracts in the day of being like, here's why the eels are deservedly so for the royal houses that most honorably serve the queen. And we're like, oh, interesting. So that you happen to deserve the eels the most just because you're closest to the queen?
Yeah, that's bullshit. The rest of us deserve. Every American,
no
matter how much the ability to pay, should have access to eels.
The 1% of Queen Elizabeth's advisors have access to 99% of the eels.
We should all be able, after a hard day of work, perhaps as the town fool or crier, perhaps as a donkey herdsmith coming home and being able to get a delicious eel pie out of the oven.
So that something like that is what 17th century Chapo was. It would be funny to put together a half hour of what our 17th century. Oh, you know who else would be regionally famous itinerant preachers.
Oh yes, those guys.
The kind of guys who this would be like us when we do like New York City based stories when we go in on like how crazy Eric Adams is. It would be whoever like rolled into.
Check out this guy. Oh,
I mean, I guess we would be based in like London at the time. Whoever rolled into London and is doing itinerant preaching at the time.
He says he's Jesus's nephew.
Thanks for that.
By the way, one more thing about eels. It is alleged that King Henry I of England died from gorging on eels.
It's hard to underemphasize how important eels were. Like the entirety of the productive capacity of England was basically sheep and eels.
Sheep and eels. That was it. That's the protein. That's the commodity. That's it.
I guess I would like to try an eel pie someday. Anyway, next question.
I love nigiri.
Thank you, Henry Beam.
Hi there, Hamilton from Colorado, first time, long time. One of the things I love when I'm studying history, especially once you kind of start to enter the modern era, is just what the fuck's going on in the rest of the world, right? Like the world becomes kind of more interconnected, and this is sort of the time where that starts to happen. So what's going on in the New World? What's going on in Asia and Africa at this time? Thanks.
I know you have an answer to that, Matt, but I do want to say from the chat just about the last question, the Chaz of the time would be the Munster Rebellion, and I'm sure that we would have been talking about.
Yes, that was absolutely the Chaz of the day.
Yes. All right. Anyway, what's going on in the rest of the world, Matt?
All right, so let's do a little start. We'll go east from Europe. We'll go west from Europe across the ocean to the New World. What's going on? Well, for the most part, in North America, you still have the vast majority of the land that is inhabited by indigenous Americans living in tribal relationships, dominating the interior of the continent. Hugging the shore, you have New England and the religiously inspired but still commercially minded colonies there. You have the Jamestown colony, which is basically just a giant death machine. It is a way to get rid of excess Englishmen, but it is still having resources pumped into it. Then you have the Spanish colonial project is happening all throughout the Caribbean and Mesoamerica and South America. The Little Ice Age effects are felt here less than elsewhere, and because there's less of that fixed declining productivity agriculture already in place, it's less of an impact. As we said, the death of all those people exposed to European diseases might have contributed to the Little Ice Age in the first place. But in New England, you're going to have the best off white people in Europe during this period, where actually caloric intake is going up as opposed to down everywhere else that Europeans lived. And that's because they're actually making it. Their little cooperative farming communities are using the fact that they have this access to this new world land that they can expropriate. They're able to do pretty well for themselves. They're doing okay. But then you get to Asia, the exact same time that the 30 Years' War is happening, the Ming Dynasty is collapsing under the same process that we saw happen in Europe, just legitimacy destroyed by changing conditions. You have the victory of a peasant rebellion, which is cyclically how regimes changed in China. You lose the mandate of heaven, some local pissed off peasant or mailman gets a bunch of his friends together in the jungle. They start off as bandits, in the hills, they start out as bandits, then they march down and they kick you off of the throne. But this rebellion was very quickly overwhelmed by an invasion of the Manchu from on the other side of the wall, who were invited in by a Ming general to help put down the rebellion. And then after that was too late, they just took the whole place over. The great
rhymes with the Habsburgs and Wallenstein there. Bringing in a general that you need to calm things down in your warring population, and then kind of losing control of them. Except the Manchu end up winning that war instead of Wallenstein.
Yeah, and it's a huge bloodbath. It takes decades, partially because they insist on all males shaving the front of their hair and wearing pigtails in the back, queues in the Manchu style. And because they insist on that, it causes an extra 10 years of rebellions they have to put down.
The haircut war.
It was a haircut war. They eventually are able to dominate, and they hold on till 1905. But that is part of the Little Ice Age crisis. We've talked with Derek about what the Ottomans were up to during this period. They were having their own cycle of rebellions, overthrows, murders of sultans, paralysis of the central authority for the same reasons. In India, the Mughals are fighting for dominance of the continent, but are pretty stable. And in Japan, the Little Ice Age is kind of ridden out more peacefully, because all the big violence of bringing together a single sort of quasi-rational state in Japan had already occurred in the late 1500s, culminating in the creation of the Tokugawa shogunate. And it's this early Tokugawa shogunate that demilitarizes Japanese society and takes the samurai class and turns them into civil servants, and like by making them into like teachers and like firefighters in Edo, and in Africa you have the establishment of the trade networks between local African powers and European colonialism that's going to build the slave trade.
It really is, this simultaneous crisis all over the world, and then the mold of Europe seeping its little tendrils into every single part of the world.
It's being like one of those coronal ejections from the sun.
Yeah.
The pressure of the 30 Years' War is shooting these people out into the Atlantic and then down to Brazil and Senegal and Cameroon and the Cape. And then just settling these trade networks just to fuel their conflict, to fuel their holy war.
Great work on that one, Matt. Let's keep moving through these. Again, I'm keeping my eye on the chat for there was something in here that made me laugh, but I can't find it again. People roasting you for Mughals, but which again,
Fuck
don't
you.
care about pronunciation, but Mughals is pretty funny.
Mughals?
Mughals? I don't know.
Mughals.
I don't know how to pronounce Indian. Come on, man. You know what? You could tell what he was saying.
I think they're the Mughals. Fuck off.
Anyway, we'll move on to the next call-in question. Keeping the eye on the chat for if there are any chat questions. I've got one more from the chat way back, which would be a good way to end this question section. But here is I usually don't do full names to protect identities, but I have to say it tickled me when I saw I got a question from Edward Nugent. So here's from Ted Nugent asking us a question.
Hey guys, amazing job on the show. It seems like the historical import of the 30 Years' War is not really who won any given battle, but that necessitated by the morass of the war, you have important new state capacities and financial structures being built as Europe gradually approaches Westphalia. But do you think there were any hinge points or singularly influential figures that might have taken the war in a different, maybe more decisive direction, or could have even stalled or changed the emergence of capitalism? Thanks, guys.
I don't think at that point I feel like the 30 Years' War is a reckoning with the death of a feudal system. Like it has to end with this death rattle for the very simple reason that the states that were adopting capitalist practices were just better at competing in this new framework. Like the Dutch were able to fight so hard above their weight, punch so high above their weight, and that the countries that couldn't change just languished. And I think that means there is no faction within the people who fought over the German lands during the 30 Years' War that could have brought any better than was assembled, like the mechanisms and powers of the state to win. I mean, they had 30 years for a victor to emerge, and the whole realization of the war is that position had been eroded by a change that nobody saw coming or understood as it was occurring.
The end of the 30 Years' War, the Treaty of Westphalia, is a little bit like Adrian Veidt at the end of Watchmen. Like, you think I would explain the change if it's still time to happen? You idiots! I did it 30 years ago.
Exactly. Boom. Yeah,
it's like the change had already occurred. This is just fighting out over the scraps. I think that the big one is obviously if Gustavus Adolphus wins.
Right. If he doesn't die.
And I think that in my mind that, like, let's say he wins literally every single battle that he is in for the rest of his time in the continent. That kind of, in my mind, just transitions the orientation of the Holy Roman Empire from Vienna to Stockholm. But I don't think greater processes necessarily change.
No, I mean, you have like a Prussian dominance of Germany, but it's Swedish instead of Prussian,
Yeah.
But it's still going to take the same agonizing process coming into being, because those sandy hills of Pomerania and the Baltic area is still just demographically behind the 8 ball. They're just not going to be able to dominate and accelerate a process that's happening geographically elsewhere.
All right, from the chat, would Martin Luther be a Twitter guy or a Reddit guy?
Oh God, both. I mean, I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. I think there are people who put their whole heart into posting both places, and if there's anyone alive who could do that, it would be Martin Luther.
I think that Luther would get too addicted to the rapid fire pithiness of Twitter, and he would just end up there. He would be constantly in 7 different arguments. Like, the ability for the rapid dissemination and rapid response of Twitter, I think, would fry Luther's brain, from what I know.
That's the thing, is that it would fry his brain. Like, I can't imagine him being, even in a medium term, a Twitter guy. He's one of those guys who gets into an insane flame war and then like posts his dick and then you never hear from again. Like a guy who does suicide by cop after they don't get Favestar posts anymore. Like he could not hang in that area. He would stimulate his mind into oblivion. He would just be like the rat in the experiment, just destroying his pleasure center.
Nailed his dick to the wall. Yes, exactly. Neuromantic. All right, we got a few more call-in questions. Keeping an eye on the chat. Here's one from Pepe T in Spain.
Hi guys, this is Pepe from Madrid. I wanted to ask about, I think you briefly touched on it on the podcast, but I wanted to know if you guys could expand on the hypothetical of Philip II of Spain and Mary of England actually being able to succeed in the Counter-Reformation in England and produce an heir, and what that would have meant for both the development of capitalism, but also I think really interestingly on colonialism in America.
Just to give Matt a chance to think about that, I would like to start this off by saying, shout out Spain. Thank you for Pepe for sending this in. We got another email recently from a Spanish listener who just wanted to say that they enjoyed the show and also politely request that we do some coverage of Spain coming up. Matt is working on a Spanish history podcast that'll come out soon.
Yes.
And we should figure some way to talk about European politics in general, other than the perfidious Anglos.
Get out of here.
But so shout out to all our Spanish listeners, and thanks for getting in touch, and thanks for giving this call. So what do you think, Matt? Philip II and Mary, let's say they end up having a 30-year marriage or something like that, producing an heir.
Yeah, that's. I think you just see the intensification of the conflicts within English society just break out maybe more violently and earlier. Because there's no way that a fully Catholicized England does not step into the European confessional wars with both feet,
Mm-hmm.
So that means you're going to have like a real military expenditure dominating the English economy, which is going to piss off all those little nascent Protestants in the cities, and they're going to resist. If there was going to be anything that threw off the timeline of capitalist development, though, that would be it.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Is there a way to say that, maybe the English Civil War comes 80
much
years earlier?
Yeah, much
and
earlier.
Maybe in parallel with the Dutch Revolt, and maybe the English and Dutch link up, the English and Dutch Protestants link up.
Yeah, and they become like a
it's
separate
like a year
state.
1600 or something.
Yeah, and they become like a separate state somehow. Like they get some sort of chunk of England.
Yeah, but even with any juice added by what England's wool exports, like Spain's still going to be a declining power. They're not going to be able to hold on to both England and it's interesting to play out.
The thing is, if that happens, what France would do is the real question.
Yeah,
that would require some sort of full scale French offensive that they would have to do all of that in the face of, as well as the rebellion of their Dutch and English towns dwellers.
Mm-hmm. So thank you, Pepe, for that question. Let's move on to all right. Two more. Okay, we're gonna wrap this up at around 5:30. Let's do two more call-ins and a few more of the chat questions. Here is Sage B.
Hi, Chapo. First time, long time.
Reverb.
Y'all have done a really great job laying out the social forces, political movements, and technological advancements that drove and caused the 30 Years' War, as well as laid out some of the high-level troop movements and politics within the military. But what I'm really interested in is what does it look like to be a infantryman out in the field? What are the unit tactics of a big battle in the 30 Years' War? Thanks.
Well, the main format that the war is dominant when the war begins is the tercio, which is this formation that the Spanish had through long trial and error had come to develop as a way to incorporate gunpowder into modern warfare. And it was a big block of dudes all squeezed together and roughly divided in thirds. A third of them having muskets, a third of them having swords and small shields, and a third of them with a big ass fucking pike. And they would march towards their opponent, and they would fucking try to push them off of their position with their pike. It was called the press of pike, and it was what determined the momentum at the center of a battlefield. You'd have an artillery engagement beforehand to set it up, and then you'd have often at the wings you would have the cavalry kind of harrying and attacking the flanks, and you would not a lot of people died relative to later warfare, because even the firearms were not that reliable or fast to use, but by the end of the war there'd been a big change in those tactics, thanks in large part to the Swedes showing up, interspersing their cannons with their infantry and concentrating rifle fire. By the time of the English Civil War, though, firearms are getting better, they're getting more prevalent, and the ratio is now 2/3 guns and 1/3 pike.
There's also a funny detail that always stays with me, related by Mike Duncan. Shout out Mike Duncan, guest of the show, on his English Civil War episode talking about the nature of war, where, this is also unpleasant, and the motivation to actually do it on the ground is so low that often if they were far enough away from their captains, when two lines of pike would meet each other, there would be a kind of spoken or even unspoken agreement that they would just kind of wave their pikes at each other from close quarters and not actually try to stab each other, but just basically play act, bang, 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 bang your pikes for a while, hoot and holler at the other line, and then turn around and run back after a while.
It's looking like you're working.
Well, because of course the person monitoring you is some noble asshole on a horse a half mile away, and there's no binoculars or anything. Well, I can't say that for sure. There's early telescopes or whatever. Nobody can tell what you're doing when you're down in the mud waving
There's no
pikes
supervisors.
at each other. Yes.
It is wild. 30 Years' War's battles would have guys with guns, and there'd be artillery, and also suits of armor, full plate armor for the officers, wielding freaking maces while people are shooting guns at one another.
It really does.
Is you're at a halfway point. It's this suspended, weird liminal space in history.
And we'll get to that a little bit more in 1 second. One more from the chat. It's funny to think about Germans having an epigenetic trauma from the 30 Years' War, but do you think the stereotypical darkness of German folktales and literature, like the original Grimm Brothers series, brutal, violent children's stories, etc., can be traced back to the Hell period you guys covered? Great question. Yes, I think
very
so.
Good question, and absolutely the case. Because when you consider that this is the time that this country is being butchered is also when we're seeing the emergence of mass popular culture for the first real time. Mm-hmm. So what is the subject? It's people getting their guts pulled out while hanging from a tree.
Yes,
it's villages being burned.
the witch trials and stuff. And I do, you know, you started this question by saying it is funny to think of Germans having epigenetic trauma from the 30 Years' War. The more I've read about this and encountered like modern German discussions about this time period, I really do think that this is more than World War II, kind of like the supernova thing that births German consciousness. Obviously, like for the most modern, and again, I can't speak as accurately to other Germans now. Obviously, the most modern Germans, that is going to be the thing that they think of the most. But it really does seem like this is the trauma that creates the German personage.
Yes, absolutely. Like the tormented, stormy soul is unleashed by the horrors of this war. It's captured in its printed culture that is transmitted, and then it gets a vessel thanks to the Napoleon.
Mm-hmm.
The invasions of German lands by the French army kickstarts this process of national ego formation around this romantic, traumatized soul. Because hurt people hurt people.
And that's what we really need to take away from this. All right. One more call-in question, and then we're going to go to very final thoughts and what's next. This is mostly for us to spin up things that we Matt and I have been fantasizing about. But here is Connor J.
G'day, lads. I'll keep it short and sweet for yous. My question can be summed up in 3 words. Early, modern, Gambo. Yes or no? Let's go.
Yes. Thank you, Connor.
Absolutely.
Connor J. Matt and I fantasize about what it would look like to actually turn this period into some kind of a series or movie or something. We have, throughout the entire process, we have lamented that there is not enough media about this. And, I was thinking about this just when Matt was talking about, the battles where you would have guns, cannons, swords, pikes, knights in armor. Like, doing it well would be amazing in how cool you could make this period,
Yeah, no, it's and you treat the religiosity of the people.
Yes, this is the most important
way
thing.
That magic appears in the Gambo world. Like Christianity is the magic. Like,
yes,
you subjectively reflect their experience of a magical world.
Yes, I mean, when I think about it, I think of things like the weirwood trees crying in Gambo, or that scene in True Detective when McConaughey looks to the skies and the birds form a spiral.
Birds turn into the spiral.
Yeah, it would be stuff like that. You would have to have like literal magic in certain ways, and it might be somebody praying in a cathedral and like a single beam of sunlight goes through a stained glass window and illuminates only them. Stuff like that. Things that are subtle but real, that a person in that time could imagine being a literal manifestation of God. Or when the powder keg blows up at Magdeburg, at Wimpfen, it would be the thing that people would see is not like, oh, if you squint at this cloud, it looks like the Virgin Mary. No, it would be a cloud into a perfect statue replica of the Virgin Mary in the sky,
right.
Like something recognizable as like, oh, this is a miracle, know? And that would be the spiritual level. And I think that you would do kind of the political intrigue, the top level, like courts and palaces and the generals and the fields and stuff. And then the other thing that I think you would need is the low level. And this, I would take a lot of like the simplicissimus stuff and have, parallel tracks of just common people moving through this period. I think Matt, you had come up with an idea of like maybe it's like 2 brothers from central Germany, and one goes to join the Imperials and one goes to join the Protestants, and you kind of track them.
The idea I had was, it's 2 brothers in like a town in like northern Bavaria or something, and or Bohemia, and when the armies march, the Imperial army is being raised up. One of them just like I'll go join the army, and then the other one, who is of course the nerd, the indoor kid, the literate one, who is aware of like the Rosicrucians and has like read the Rosicrucian texts. When the Protestant army shows up and they're gonna like rampage through their home, he convinces them, the officers, that he is a Rosicrucian. And then he
gets like
kind of bullshits his way up
into,
all the
like, the
way
court?
to the Heidelberg court. Yeah.
Yes.
Just in time for White Mountain when his brother shows up.
Yes. Okay, great. Anyway, we have ideas about this. Maybe in like a decade, you'll see that somebody has put this together, and you'll know, we're behind it.
We'll do it in Mid-Journey.
Yes, exactly. Maybe, honestly,
who knows?
Yes, if it gets it out.
This pell-mell pace of life these days, who knows what's going to happen?
But it's on you, fans, for whenever whenever anything 30 Years War related comes up, smash that fucking like and subscribe, and not just from us, from anyone out there who's doing this. Show that there is an audience.
If there's a Broadway musical about Wallenstein, go see it.
Yes. We'll ponder the orb until then. You watch the skies, we'll watch the orb. Okay. Final question that I took from the chat. To bring us back down and do a little more serious on the way out. Do you feel like doing this series has elucidated our current moment and helped you understand what's coming next? Or has it reinforced how impossible it is to see our future?
Yeah, that's what definitely being humbled before like the totality of historical movement. Like we really have convinced ourselves that we have an ability to tune in, to understand what's happening far beyond our actual capacity. Like we are filling in so much, just like these people were. But we have no other choice but to operate from some assumed understanding of the world around us. But the things that are changing it are just so massive and are occurring at such a scale that we really do, like with any kind of perception of the universe, live at the exact wrong size. Like to understand, we're supposed to understand the world, ourselves, our historical trajectory, the natural realms around us, and all of the meaningful action occurs either at the atomic level or at the galactic level, neither of which we can actually observe. So we're just fucking making shit up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I got from this, is like you can look back and see and recognize, the shapes and lay them over your own patterns of life and like find a resonance there so that you can like make sense of the way that living in this world makes you feel. But you can't know where it's headed.
Yeah, I agree. It's the long-term result of what all these people were building, even though they thought that they were fighting over whether God is the bread or the bread is God, or, whether or not you should have a rail or a stained glass in your church or whatever, or, your parliamentary, the rights of Englishmen in the parliament or whatever. What they were actually building would be so horrifying to them if they knew what was coming that it really just brings back to me that you have to you have to focus on thinking what you can about the now and understanding what you can around and knowing, forming your feelings, forming your instincts, trusting your gut around the moment rather than what you think the future is going to hold.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Precisely. No, totally.
All right. Well, let's move into the wrap-up portion of this wrap-up stream. The first thing that I want to do is tease some merch, which will also be coming out Wednesday. We are doing a drop of some designs from Ben Clarkson, who did the animation that you see right behind you. Let's see if these are at all visible. I'm going to blow this up. Look at these. Hell on Earth shield standard. This is the coat of arms design. And this is the Hell on Earth soldier design. These are going to be available in crew neck and t-shirt, cream and black. We're trying to get some red ones available. I really want to get some red ink on a black crew neck. We'll see. You got to buy these first. The way that our new shipping, our our new shipping company works is that you have to do pre-orders. Like once this goes live, there'll be probably like a 2-week window to get your orders in, and then they'll just manufacture everything that we ordered. So those will go up very soon. And also let me scroll down. What are these? Oh, Hell on Earth hats, Zapata oil T-shirts, Zapata hat. The Zapata hat is back. Zapata. We got the Zapata hat. See again, pronunciation.
The Zapata hat. We get the frickin' Zapata hat.
So on Wednesday, new merch drops. Go out and buy some Hell on Earth stuff. If this sells out, we'll hopefully be able to get some new colorways going. I can't wait to walk around. Oh, and something very important to me. Notice that nowhere on here does it say a podcast or a Chapo Trap House or anything. It just says Hell on Earth, Semper Finis Mundi. It's always the end of the world. So nobody has to know that you're listening to a dork ass or you're wearing dork ass podcast swag. So that is my other big announcement. As I said earlier, the soundtrack will be live on Wednesday. I'm very excited to get that out. Shout out to all our talented people who made that happen. You'll be able to get to know them and their work. It'll all be linked on the Bandcamp page. Oh, one last thing before we go out. As we did last time we did one of these wrap-up screams, we teased Hell on Earth itself. Should we tease what's coming down the pike from us now?
Yes, let's do it. So this summer, it's probably I'm shooting for maybe like July. We'll see. And when a opening appears in our schedule of bonus content, I'm gonna slip in a mini series, just me, on the Spanish Civil War. So it's gonna be inebriated past because it's just gonna be me, but I'll probably write it mostly, and so that will be like maybe 3-4 episodes. I'm not sure yet. And that'll come out this summer, and then hopefully what we want to do for next year.
I would say aim for September for that one.
Okay, good. Giving more time, I'll use it. And then next year sometime, we're going to get back in the saddle for the 7 Years' War, which is another amazingly important and underexplored topic that, what's this? Also tells the story of the global dominance of capitalism.
I think I cracked a way to organize that just thinking about it, and I'll see what you think about it. And why not just riff it out here? Wonder if each episode focuses on one theater of it. So you start with the French and Indian War in the colonies, and then you go to maybe touch in on Europe, and then you maybe go to India or something like that.
Yeah, and we could organize it around like one character.
Yes.
Like we could do George Washington for the French and Indian War. Frederick the Great, of course, for the European War. Who else are you going to? There's nobody else for the European. Then there's maybe you do Clive of India for the Indian part of it, because we need to talk about that whole thing and where that leads to. Yeah, I think that could work.
We'll figure it out. We need to figure out what the overriding thesis of the whole thing is, and also what its name is. I'm running out of hell.
Yeah,
the problem of going hell on Earth is that you kind of can't go higher. Oh, another theater, the high seas. Do a whole episode on piracy.
You got to do a whole thing about the golden age of piracy.
I was kind of thinking of making it just Hell on Earth 2, Hell on the High Seas.
Hell on the High Seas. Yes.
Maybe. But there's so much other stuff that you got to talk about. Anyway, I got to take a break from reading in general.
Yeah, no, I get it.
So I'll probably dive into that
I'm
this
compelled,
fall.
so I'll keep doing it, but you take a break.
I also personally have a vague idea for a history series that would kind of combine movie mindset and the Hell of
this is
series.
The final synthetic product, yes.
Yes. Which... Again, I don't want to give too much away on, but I have a vague idea of doing something that's basically tracing the material history of Hollywood. So it's like the business history of Hollywood and how that affects the movies that you see, with the overall theory that we all know movies are dreams, correct? What I entertain is that they are, in fact, not just the dreams of their creators, but the dreams of the capitalist mode of production that produces them.
It's true.
And what they say is part of how they're made, which is part of the business decisions behind them, which is part of the industrial process of creating art. That one would be called Hell of a Picture. So we'll see if that ever happens. That would probably be like 2 years from now.
Yeah, I do think that's a really good idea, though. I'm very excited about it.
All right. Well, that's what's coming up. More to come. All great. Let's leave out on this. I don't think you've heard this yet, Matt. This is the
I haven't heard the final version. No.
We're going to leave you with this. This is something that Will gave out as an idea, and
Catherine, I believe.
Catherine had the idea. Will told it to us. We sent it over to Charles Austin, the music maestro of episode 1. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for tuning in. More history to come. Stick around for Movie Mindset. That series is, look, if you are a movie head, the Movie Mindset series is fucking crack. That thing is Will and Hessa firing on all cylinders, giving you 4 hours of movie content takes in a 2-hour podcast, just in terms of how fast they're going. That's going to be a fun one, but we'll leave you out with this. This is We Didn't Start the Fire, 17th century version.
Martin Luther, Wittenberg, Charles V, Habsburg, Ulrich Zwingli, Lucas Cranach, Spanish Tercio, Genevieve Salter, Small Beer, Johann Tetzel, Wonder Year, Thomas Munster, Anabaptist, Giordano Bruno. Duke of Alba, Jesuits, Neck, Ruffles, Ultra Quiz, Jerkins, Henry Guys, and Elector Fred the Wise. Treasure Fleets, Julie Cleaves, England's got a new queen. Defenestration of Prague, Matchburgers, goodbye. We didn't start the fire, it was always burning since the world's been turning. We didn't start the fire, no we didn't light it, but we tried to fight it. Rembrandt, Van Dyke, Flanders army on strike, Count Duke, Petticoat, Spain loses all their boats. Rosicrucian, alchemy, France invades Germany, contributions, Reaper's War, Bernard of Saxe Weimar. White Mountain, Count Tilly, Mansfeld and Piccolomini, slave trade, witch trials, arquebusiers, Peruvian silver mines, Frederick of the Palatine, 12-year truce expires, it's the end of days. We didn't start the fire, it was always burning since the world's been turning. We didn't start the fire, no we didn't light it, but we tried to fight it. Wallenstein, Pikemen, salivating Ottomans, Shakespeare, Marlowe, Cadiz is a no-go. Swedes and Pomerania, Dutch tulip mania, Puritans, Boehner, bloodbath at Eiger, Count Horn, Breitenfeld, Johann Olden, Barneveld, Gustavus A, blown away. What else do I have to say? We didn't start the fire, it was always burning since the world's been turning. We didn't start the fire, no we didn't light it, but we tried to fight it. Ship money, star forts, Cromwell painted with warts, Roundheads, Cavaliers, Prince Rupert in the rear, Charles I, regicide, Dewitt brothers eaten alive, Peg leg, Peter Stuyck, Croats invent the necktie, Restoration, Rompyar, Sobieski's Hussars, Dido and Aeneas, Henning Brandt, boiling piss, Richelieu, politiques, King of Spain's a circus freak, Chapo covers Europe's wars, I can't take it anymore. We didn't start the fire, it was always burning since the world's been turning. We didn't start the fire, but when we are gone, it will still burn on and 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 on. We didn't start the fire, it was always burning since the world's been turning. We didn't start the fire.
Mighty fine, son. That's mighty fine.
Shout out Charles for putting that together to us. That will be available on the soundtrack as well. Can you, the actual song is like twice as long. He really that's like a 6-minute long song in real life.
I like 3 verses. I'm like, this is too much stuff.
Yeah,
Billy,
I'm glad that
I get it. You went to college. Congratulations.
I'm glad we kept that to 3 minutes. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you in September in Spain. This has been Hell on Earth. This has been Chris and Matt signing off.